I walked into my own bedroom and found my wife kissing her best friend like they'd been waiting 10 years for me to blink. I didn't expect my life to change in the span of 5 seconds. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I came home early from work because the crane at the job site broke. I had a bag of tacos in one hand and a cold Topo Chico in the other, planning to surprise my wife, Freyja. But when I walked into our bedroom, my whole body locked up. She was kissing her best friend, Ingrid. Not a casual peck, not a drunk, goofy girl kiss for laughs. This was slow, deep. Her hands in Ingrid's hair, Ingrid's hands on her waist. They didn't even hear me come in. "Are you kidding me?" I said, loud enough to snap them apart like I'd fired a gun. Freyja's eyes went wide. Ingrid froze, color draining from her face. "Ah," Ingrid stammered, already grabbing her gym bag from the floor. "I'm gonna go." Freyja reached out like she wanted her to stay, but Ingrid just muttered, "Call me," and slipped past me, out the door. The silence she left behind was loud enough to make my ears ring. "What the hell was that?" I demanded, still standing by the door. Freyja sat on the edge of the bed, head in her hands. "It's not what you think." "Not what I think." I cut her off. "I think I just caught my wife making out with her best friend in our bedroom. What am I missing?" She looked up, tears already in her eyes. "Eric, I didn't want you to find out like this." "Is there a good way to find out?" I snapped. She winced. It's been happening for a few months." "A few months?" I repeated. "How long exactly?" "About 6, she admitted, barely audible. I leaned against the wall, trying to keep from pacing. 6 months, and you didn't think to say anything?" She shook her head. "It started small, harmless. Ingrid and we've always talked about women, how they look, how they carry themselves. You know she's bisexual, right?" "I know," I said flatly. "But I thought that was just trivia, not a green light to cheat on me." Freyja's voice shook. "It wasn't planned. It's not like I went looking for it, but she gets me in a way that's different. We'd joke about other women, like how some have this confidence or the way they move. She'd say things like, 'A guy would never notice that,' and I'd laugh because it was true." She took a shaky breath. "And then we'd talk about the other side, how men can do things women can't. The physicality, the way you've always made me feel safe, held, grounded. We weren't comparing to choose, we were comparing to understand." I shook my head. "And somewhere in there, you decided to test the theory?" Her face crumpled. "One night after a couple of drinks, she kissed me. It wasn't supposed to happen again, but it did. And then it wasn't just physical anymore. We started talking about feelings. I was terrified to tell you because I thought you'd see it as me picking her over you." I ran a hand through my hair, my stomach turning. "So you've been lying to me for half a year, lying every time you said you were just grabbing coffee or going to the gym with her." She nodded, tears spilling now. "Yes, and I hate myself for it." The heat in my chest made it hard to breathe. "I don't care that she's a woman, Freyja. This isn't about gender. It's about trust. And you blew it." She covered her face. "I don't want to lose you. I love you. I also have feelings for her. I don't know how to make that make sense." "It doesn't make sense," I said, "and I'm not sure it ever will." We sat in silence until the sound of Ingrid's car faded down the street. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Finally, Freyja spoke again. Would you go to therapy with me, just to talk this through?" "I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I need us to understand what's happening." I stared at her, still hurt, still angry, but also realizing I needed answers before I made any decisions. "One condition," I said. "We tell the truth. Every detail. No hiding, no softening it to make it sound better." She nodded. "Okay, I'll tell you everything." We found a couples therapist who could see us the next week. That first session was brutal. The therapist asked Freyja to describe her feelings for Ingrid, and hearing it made my chest ache. Not because Ingrid was a woman, but because the words sounded too close to the way she once described me. Freyja admitted she felt like Ingrid saw her in a different way. They could talk about body image, intimacy, attraction, things she sometimes struggled to say to me. And she liked how they could be soft and slow without the pressure she sometimes felt with me, but also still enjoy the safety and stability I gave her. When the therapist asked me how I felt, I said the truth. Like I've been replaced in half my marriage and told I should be okay with it because the other person's a woman. We left that first session with homework to talk about what we each actually needed from a relationship and whether those needs could even exist in the same marriage. I wasn't sure if therapy was going to fix this, but I knew I had to try, if only to be certain about my decision when the time came. And deep down, a small voice I didn't want to admit to myself yet was already asking, what if she wants both of us? And what if she expects me to say yes? Therapy wasn't a magic wand. If anything, the first 3 sessions made me angrier. I kept thinking we'd hit a point where Frasier would say, I made a mistake. I want to fix it. Instead, she kept using words like complicated feelings and connection in different ways. The therapist, Dr. Wilcox, a soft-spoken woman in her 50s, would nod like that was profound. To me, it just sounded like excuses. In the second week, Dr. Wilcox asked Freya directly, what would your ideal outcome be? Freya looked nervous, but she didn't hesitate. I don't want to lose Eric. And I don't want to lose Ingrid either. I shifted in my chair. So you want both? Her eyes flicked toward me. Yes, but not like sneaking around. Open, honest, with rules. Dr. Wilcox leaned forward. You're describing a polyamorous relationship. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the word felt so far from my life. So let me get this straight, I said. You want to keep our marriage and keep dating your best friend? I'm saying we could make it work, Freya said quickly. It wouldn't mean you're less important. It wouldn't mean I love you less. Sure as hell feels like it would, I muttered. Dr. Wilcox looked at me. Eric, would you be willing to explore what this might look like before you decide? I wanted to say no. I really did. But something in me, maybe stubbornness, maybe a twisted sense of fairness, wanted to at least understand what Freya thought this could be. Fine, I said. Let's hear it. Freya took a deep breath. It would mean we'd set clear boundaries. You'd always be my husband. You and I would still have our time, and you'd have a say in everything that happens. No surprises, ever again. I stared at her. You think there's a version of this where I'm happy watching you love someone else? I think there's a version where we both get to keep what matters most, she said softly. That night, we sat at the kitchen table for hours. She talked about how being with Ingrid felt different. Not better, not worse, just different. How she could talk to Ingrid about things she'd never been able to explain to me without feeling awkward, especially about body image and intimacy. How women sometimes just know what another woman needs without having to be told. And you think I can't? I asked. You can, she said quickly. You have. You're the reason I've always felt safe in a relationship. You're the only person I've ever truly trusted with my whole self. But this isn't about replacing you. It's about adding. I shook my head. Adding. Like we're talking about getting a second dog. That's not fair, she said. It took me 3 more days to even consider her idea. By the 4th night, I told her if we tried, there'd be rules. Non-negotiable ones. Rule 1, no one finds out until we're sure it's working. No family, no friends. Rule 2, therapy is mandatory, both together and individually. Rule 3, my time with Freya stays my time. I don't want to feel like a guest in my own marriage. Rule 4, I get a full stop button. If I say it's over, it's over. Rule 5, absolutely no surprises. I never walk into something like I did that day again. Freya agreed to all of it without hesitation. We told Dr. Wilcox the next session. She nodded, made some notes, and said, You're not committing to doing it yet. You're committing to exploring if you can do it. Even with the rules in place, I felt uneasy. I wasn't jealous yet, mostly because we hadn't actually started anything. But the idea of it was already in my head, and I could feel it lurking in the background. When Ingrid's name popped up on Freya's phone, my stomach would twist. When she mentioned something funny, Ingrid said I'd picture them together and lose my appetite. The worst part? A small part of me wondered if I'd already lost more than I was willing to admit, and that this experiment was just buying time before I had to face it. By the end of the month, Dr. Wilcox said we'd done enough talking. If you're going to try, she said, you need to start. Otherwise, you're just circling the same fears without testing if they're real. I looked at Freya. She looked at me. And against my better judgment, I said, Fine, let's see what happens. The first trial run was dinner at a little Mediterranean place downtown. Dr. Wilcox had suggested starting with something neutral. Not at home, not at Ingrid's place, and definitely not anything that could be mistaken for a date with just two people. I got there first. Sat at the corner table by the window, hands gripping the water glass like I was waiting for a job interview. Freya and Ingrid walked in together. They were laughing about something, and for a split second I thought, they look good together. Then my stomach tightened because I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning. Dinner was awkward. We tried small talk at first. Work, the weather, some story about our neighbor's dog getting loose again. Every few minutes, though, I'd catch a glance between them, something subtle, like a shared inside joke I wasn't part of. Halfway through the meal, Ingrid looked at me and said, "You can ask me anything, you know. No filter." I raised an eyebrow. "Anything?" She nodded. "All right," I said. "Why me? If you've got this connection with Freya, why keep me around?" Her expression softened. "Because she loves you, and because I actually like you, Eric. This isn't about replacing anyone. It's about more. More," I repeated. I'm still getting used to that word. Over the next few weeks, we tried to make it feel normal. Sometimes the three of us would go out, a trivia night, a hike at Barton Creek, cooking dinner together at our place. Other times, Freya would have a date night with Ingrid while I stayed home. That was harder. The first time it happened, I told myself I was fine. I watched a movie, made a frozen pizza, even got some work done. But when midnight rolled around and she still wasn't home, I started pacing. Every sound outside made me check the window. When she finally walked in, smiling and flushed from the cold, she hugged me like nothing was wrong. But I couldn't stop picturing her hand in Ingrid's, laughing at something only they understood. Jealousy started creeping in quietly, like a draft under the door. It wasn't every moment. Some nights, I actually enjoyed having Ingrid around. She was funny, quick-witted, and went out of her way to make me feel included. But other nights, I'd catch the way her hand lingered on Freya's shoulder, or the way Freya leaned toward her when they laughed, and I'd feel like I was watching my wife slip through my fingers in slow motion. We'd agreed to talk about everything, so I brought it up in therapy. "I feel like I'm losing her, piece by piece," I told Dr. Wilcox. Freya's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not leaving you, Eric. I'm trying to share myself without breaking anything." I shook my head. It already feels broken some days. The first real fight came 2 months in. We were planning a Saturday, brunch, errands, maybe a movie. When Freya mentioned that Ingrid had asked her to come to a weekend yoga retreat. "It's just 2 nights, she said. "We could do our stuff next weekend." I froze. "So I get bumped for a yoga trip now?" "It's not like that," she said. "This is something she's been wanting me to try with her for months." "Yeah, and I've been wanting to feel like my marriage still comes first," I snapped. Her face went tight. "You agreed to this, Eric. You set the rules. This doesn't break any of them." "It breaks the one that matters most," I said. "The one where I'm not supposed to feel like a backup plan." We didn't talk for the rest of the day. That night, she slept on her side of the bed, her back to me. The next morning, I found a text from Ingrid. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause a fight. I can back off for a bit if you need space." I stared at it for a long time before replying. It's not about space. It's about knowing where the line is. By our next therapy session, it was clear we needed to revisit the rules. Dr. Wilcox suggested adding a check-in before any overnight plans. No big trips without talking through it first. Freya agreed, Ingrid agreed, and I agreed. Even though deep down, I knew the real problem wasn't the rules. It was whether my heart could ever stop comparing the before and after versions of my marriage. By the 6-month mark, I had to admit something I never thought I'd say. It was getting easier. Not perfect, not the same as before, but easier. The therapy sessions helped. We'd gotten better at saying things out loud before they could rot in silence. If something bothered me, I didn't swallow it and let it fester. I told Freya. Sometimes it was awkward, sometimes it ended in a fight, but it never got buried. We also added a check-in night every Sunday. No phones, no distractions. Just the two of us on the couch, talking about the week. If something with Ingrid had been too much for me, that's when I'd bring it up. The biggest change was in the bedroom. At first, I hated the thought of Freya being with Ingrid in that way. It wasn't about the physical. It was about the intimacy I thought we'd built for just us. But somewhere along the way, my brain stopped treating it like a threat. The first time the three of us were in the bedroom together, it was clumsy. Too many pauses, too much overthinking. I felt like I was watching them more than participating, trying to figure out where I fit. But over time, we stopped making it an event. Sometimes it happened when we were all hanging out, talking, maybe having a glass of wine. One thing would lead to another, and it felt less like a scheduled performance and more like, well, three people enjoying each other. There were moments I actually liked. For example, Freya has always been shy about certain things with me, but she wasn't with Ingrid, and sometimes Ingrid would bring that side of her out even when it was just the two of us later. The whole thing felt more open, more playful. One night stands out in my mind. We'd gone out to a rooftop bar, and it was one of those perfect Austin nights, warm but breezy, city lights buzzing below. Freya was laughing at something Ingrid said, and I realized I wasn't jealous. I was just happy they were both happy. When we got home, all three of us ended up in bed, still tipsy. I remember at one point leaning back and just watching them together, not as a threat to me, but as something I got to be part of. I reached for Freya's hand, and she squeezed mine without even looking, like she knew I needed that reminder. Outside the bedroom, we started moving more like a team. If Ingrid was coming over, I didn't feel like a host anymore. I felt like she was part of the routine. She'd help cook, clean up, watch shows with us. We weren't tiptoeing around anymore. And the jealousy? It didn't vanish, but it stopped being a constant ache. Now it was more like a little voice I could shush when I remembered what I was getting in return. Honesty, intimacy, and a marriage that was still standing, just in a different shape. About a year in, Dr. Wilcox asked me, "Do you feel like you've adapted, or are you still tolerating?" I had to think about that. "I think I've adapted," I said slowly, "but I'd be lying if I said I don't miss how it used to be. I'll probably always miss it, but I'm not angry anymore. I'm not counting the ways it's different. I'm just here, and it's working." Freya squeezed my knee under the table. Ingrid smiled, and for once, I didn't feel like I was losing anything in that moment. Later that night, after Ingrid left, Freya curled up next to me and said, "I know this wasn't the life you imagined." "No," I said, "but it's the one we've got, and we're making it work." She kissed my chest and whispered, "I love you." And I realized, for all the chaos, for all the adjustments, for all the times I almost walked away, I still believed her. A year and a half after that first blow-up in our bedroom, life looked completely different. For one, we all live together now. It started with Ingrid spending more and more nights over. At first, it was easier. No driving home late, no juggling schedules. But eventually, the toothbrush in the bathroom turned into a drawer in the dresser, which turned into her officially moving in. It was weird for maybe a week. After that, it just worked. We split bills 3 ways. Ingrid started doing the grocery shopping because she liked it. Freya cooked most nights, and I handled house repairs. The place ran smoother than it ever had when it was just the two of us. Family and friends were another story. When we finally told people, reactions were mixed. My brother called it a midlife crisis with better lighting. Freya's mom cried and asked if it meant we were divorcing. My best friend Lars just said, "Of course this happened to you, man," and bought me a beer. Some friends stopped inviting us to things. Others got weirdly curious, asking questions that crossed the line. And a few, the ones that mattered, just shrugged and said, "If you're happy, we're happy." Still, the judgment stung. There were whispers at family gatherings, sideways looks when Ingrid put an arm around Freya in public. We started going to therapy specifically for that. Dr. Wilcox helped us work on thickening our skin, finding ways to set boundaries without being defensive. We practiced polite but firm responses. It works for us. We're all consenting adults. You don't have to understand it to respect it. It wasn't about convincing anyone. It was about keeping our peace. Somewhere along the way, something else happened. Ingrid and I got closer. It wasn't romantic at first, just easy companionship. She'd help me in the yard, we'd run errands together, sometimes grab lunch when Freya was busy. But then we started having our own inside jokes, our own conversations about life and work that didn't always involve Freya. It wasn't replacing anything, it was adding. And it felt good. One night, after Freya had gone to bed early, Ingrid and I were sitting on the porch with a couple of beers. The air was warm, the cicadas buzzing, and she was unusually quiet. Finally, she said, "You know, I hoped it would end up like this from the beginning." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" She took a sip before answering. "I've always loved both men and women, and I've never been able to choose just one for life. But when I saw how you treated Freyja, how safe she felt, how much fun you two had together, I thought, that's the kind of relationship I want to be in. I just didn't know how to get there without blowing everything up." "So you planned this?" I asked. She smiled, not in a smug way, but almost shy. "Not planned exactly, but I knew if it could work with anyone, it'd be you, because you wouldn't just love her, you'd respect me too." It was a lot to take in. Part of me wanted to be annoyed, to feel manipulated, but another part of me, the bigger part, realized she was right. If someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd be in a 3-person relationship, living under one roof, happier than I'd been in years, I would have laughed them out of the room. Now, I had my wife. I had Ingrid. And somehow, instead of tearing my marriage apart, it made it stronger. Freyja seemed lighter these days, more herself. She smiled more, laughed more, and I felt the same. The night ended with Ingrid leaning over and kissing my cheek. "Thanks for trusting us," she said. Later, when I got into bed, Freyja mumbled sleepily, "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, pulling her close. "Better than okay." Because here's the truth. Maybe Ingrid had been the mastermind. Maybe this was her dream set up from the start, but it had become our dream too. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what we'd lost. I was thinking about what we'd built. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. If you want to share your stories, please comment below. Additionally, what is your opinion on the poster's decision?